Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to düzdanışaq, Straight Talk, an Azerbaijani, normally Azerbaijani language channel broadcasting from Washington, D.C. I'm your host, İsmayıl Jalilov. We try to keep track of the events in Azerbaijan and the region, and today we're talking to a journalist who was born in Afghanistan and lives in Germany. Not because it has a direct relation to Azerbaijan, but when you think about it, we're from the same region, and there is one, however big, country between Afghanistan and Azerbaijan. We're separated by Iran. So Iran borders on both of our countries. So yes, we may say that it's far, but it is still the same region. And to what extent events in one country affect the other, I don't know. We'll try to find out. We'll try to figure it out. And I'm pretty sure we're going to have different opinions about it. That's fine. I would like to encourage you before we start to comment actively under this video and share your thoughts. I understand that the Azerbaijani-speaking audience does not often feel comfortable expressing their thoughts in English, which is fine. Neither am I accustomed to interviewing people in English all that much. Our languages are Azerbaijani and Russian mostly. Anyway, with all this said, I think I mentioned the date. Let's say hello to our friend and new guest, Arezao Naiby, a journalist born in Afghanistan who lives in Cologne, Köln, Germany. Arezao, good evening.
Good evening.
I would like to thank you for participating in our conversation today. Thank you for your time. The very first question on our chat is asking about your ethnicity. They're asking if you're Hazarian. Is that correct?
I'm Hazara. Hazara is from Afghanistan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, apparently our audience knows more about Afghanistan than I do, so I'll try not to disappoint them. Afghanistan has been on the screens again, on the screens of all global TV channels. And we don't do hot news. We do in-depth interviews, and we follow the events in the region and try not to describe the situation in sound bites. Watching what's going on in Afghanistan, those horrifying images we saw from Kabul airport, as an Afghan, what did you feel when you saw that on TV?
It's very hard, and it breaks my heart when I see the picture and the videos from Afghanistan, from Kabul. Kabul is is a city where I born and grew up, and now it's very tough for me because still my relatives and my family is there living, and I've been there for a while, a long time in Afghanistan, and we, in this 20 years, when I was there, we tried really lots and tried to make a good atmosphere, at least in Kabul. But now we are going back 20 years. And I think we are back in this point, which we were for 20 years.
Mm. I am very curious, as an American citizen, as someone who has lived in this country for 24, 25 years, I remember the start of the war in Afghanistan. I remember what the US government said to us was going to happen to Afghanistan. It was going to become a democratic nation, give women rights, etc., etc. And this is what we wanted to hear, and this is what we all wanted to happen to Afghanistan. Now, in 2021, we see Taliban come back, and we see the government of Taliban come back to power. My question is, what did you think that Taliban would come back to power? Did Afghan people think that Taliban would come back to power after so many years? And to what extent can you comment? How many people in Afghanistan do support Taliban in general?
I think it's a very difficult question, and I can answer how many people are supporting Taliban in Afghanistan. But of course, there's some people supporting Taliban. But the main problem was in 20 years because the majority of people who was supporting Afghan government would support like American or NATO countries. And still, in these 20 years, we couldn't make it to fight against Taliban and other terrorist groups. And I think it's very still. It was not perfect country. It's what perfect government that we had in these 20 years. But I think most of the people, at least in Kabul, in the big cities, didn't accept it that the Taliban will come back in power and take all the country. It was like a shock just 2-3 weeks ago when they came to Kabul and in some other cities. It was like just a shock for the people, and for me, still I can't accept it that that's happening again, and they all come back and they take all the country so easily and so fast.
Mm-hmm. I'm quite curious as to when you look at what's going on. Of course, it's a very new situation, very fresh. We probably don't have a lot of information to be able to definitively answer that. But when you think of Afghanistan right now, when you think of Taliban rule right now, do you see a lot of difference? In other words, I'm trying to figure out, did they change? We read some things in Western and US media that Taliban are more pragmatic now, they're more business-like now. But from what you hear and what you see, do you think they have changed all that much?
No, I don't. Of course, the Taliban say in this weeks that they will let the women to go to school, to go to university, to go and work and take part in government. But that's not true. I think everyone who knows this group, they were for 2001 in this country. And that was very tough and difficult time for women and for minority, for ethnic like Hazara people or non-Muslim people like Hindu and Sikh people. They had no right. On that time, I was a child, maybe I think just 5 or 6 years old when the Taliban came in our city in Mazar Sharif. It was a massacre in our city. And they killed all the people. They searched house by house, and they killed all Hazara people and the minority. And suddenly, my mother couldn't go out with that man and with burqa. And my mother lost the job, and we were not allowed to go to school. And then. And there was no media, no journalists, and no even I think I'm not sure, but I think on that time in Mazar Sharif, even UN was not allowed to work and stay in the city.
You said your mother. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and in these 20 years, they were not out of Afghanistan. There was also some cities where the Taliban were. And in these cities, in these arts, the woman had no rights, and the journalists were not allowed to go in the city. And how can we accept now that they are coming and taking all the country, and they change just in a few weeks? Me as a woman who experienced and who lived a few years under this regime, I don't think so. I think now it's like they took all the country very fast and suddenly, and they are just they are now in power. I think we will see what they do with the minority and women and everything in Afghanistan.
You mentioned your mom lost her job when Mazar-e-Sharif was taken over by Taliban, and you said you talked about women journalists, and I saw on your Facebook page you actually posted an article about women disappearing from the media, from journalism work, and police women. You were asking about what's going to happen to them now. What do you think will happen to them? Tell us about your mom. Tell us about what she was working as before Taliban came, and other women doctors in under Taliban rule. Do you think the situation will change? What kind of jobs do you think women will be allowed to do with Taliban? And if you can contrast it and compare it with the first time they were in power 20 years ago, some 20 years ago.
Okay, I'm not sure should I say or not, but okay, my mother was working as a police officer in Afghanistan, and she was educated as a police officer and worked, and and that is why I had contact with lots of police and soldiers in Afghanistan, and especially women. Because during this time, my mother supported lots of women in Afghanistan. And now it is also very important for me to see most of the Western country. There is opportunity, or at least they try to help some journalists, some women activists, and some groups from Afghanistan to get out. But there is nothing. No one is talking about this women police and women soldiers, and they are a group which are really now in a very difficult situation, because I'm sure they will not they cannot work anymore, and they are all in danger now, and yeah, but and you asked me about the woman, and as my experience for 2001 and in this 20 years in some cities. I left Afghanistan in 2015 and moved as a refugee to Germany. And but when I was in Afghanistan, I was working as a journalist, and I traveled lots in different cities. But in the cities where Taliban was, where the woman couldn't do really anything. They were just stuck in houses, and they were just allowed to go outside with burqa. And I think maybe just few women were allowed to work as a doctor, but just at home. And you are allowed to take just woman in your home, woman visitor. But it doesn't work. You cannot work as a doctor in your home and have all your staff. That's not working.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe in like stone time, but no, not now. And journalists are not allowed to work. Women activists, and they even killed journalist woman in Kabul. They threw it. Women activists, women police officer, women soldier, and all the women who were active, and all of the people who were active, they tried to kill them. How can we accept it? Now that they are coming back and they give the right for these people.
You know, I'm listening to you, and I'm trying to understand the basis for it. I know a lot about Iran. I know a lot about Iranian society. Azerbaijan borders on Iran, as I said. I've watched, I remember Iran. I'm old enough to remember Iran before the Islamic Revolution. We've been watching their television when I was very little. The first American cartoons, Disney cartoons, I saw on Iranian TV back then during the Shah. And I understand what's going on in Iran right now, more or less, much better than I do in Afghanistan. So in Iran, women are allowed to drive. Women can participate in all activities of life. They can be doctors. They can be police officers.
Mm, please.
I'm trying to, forgive me if my questions are very naive. As a foreigner, I'm trying to understand how can a society function when roughly one half of it, the very people who give education and upbringing to their children, are not allowed to participate in day-to-day life. Can women have access to education? How can an educated person or a person who is not allowed to leave her house bring up a wholesome future participant in a society, a citizen? How is that possible? What do people think about all that?
I think that's a very good question, and that's a question that I would like to ask Taliban and the people who think like this. And I don't understand why should we think about it? I'm a woman. I'm like you. I'm like other people. Like all people, all human in this world. It doesn't matter. I'm a woman or a man or something else. And I think it's a bullshit idea if a person think that the woman can do everything. And actually, I can understand and answer this question, but I asked him, why would is not allow or not allow women to work? Why?
You
And
know, I,
how?
I'm trying to think if you get sick, like if I were a Taliban member, if I got sick and there is a woman doctor who I know is going to save my life or, cure me, why wouldn't I go to her? What do you think makes Taliban? I know, I understand I'm asking you to speculate, but you know those people better than I do. You've seen them. What do you think scares them about women so much? I mean, is it religion? Because we can look at Iran, which is an Islamic republic, but attitude towards women is completely different there. What do you think is different with Taliban, with people who rule Afghanistan today?
I don't know, but I think, of course, there's something with religion, and but I think there's enough Muslim countries in this world that we can see, like Malaysian or like other countries like Turkey or some other, that they are also Muslim, but in this country the women have some rights and they are even they are allowed to work, educated, and everything. But and me as a person who I studied Islam in my school and later on in the university. But as I know, there is nothing special in Islam, and it's not writing that a woman should stay all the time at home and they are not allowed to work and do anything. And there's lots of things that the Taliban are doing now, and it doesn't depend to Islam.
Mhm.
Afghanistan is a Muslim country, and they were a Muslim country. It's not a new religion in Afghanistan. It has been a long time, but now everything is changing. And if in 1970 we were also Muslim, but in Kabul, it was a modern country, a modern city like Paris or like other European country. If on that time we were also Muslim.
You know, I've been seeing pictures of Kabul from 1970s. It seemed like a very modern city, as you said. It seemed like a very educated and cultured city. My fear, and the reason why I want to talk about Afghanistan today, is the way I see the situation, the way I personally observe history. Countries that have culture and modernity and access to education, access to technology today can become very different and, frankly, very scary places tomorrow. I've seen it happen in Iran. I am not entirely happy what's going on in Azerbaijan right now. I hope we don't have the future that is very similar to Afghanistan's, because I wouldn't wish that future on anyone, Afghans, Azerbaijanis, Iranians, or anybody. But my concern is this: where does it start? Can we say that what we have in Afghanistan today started with education system? Afghanistan was invaded in the 70s by Soviets. Then, from then on, from 78, 79, it was a nonstop, history of occupation. Where, if you were to think about what happened between 1970s and now, when we see girls going to school, young women choosing profession, your mom was a professional, as you said, and situation right now, what role do you think the education system and destruction maybe of education system play in it?
I think what happened in Afghanistan in this 14 years, of course, there's lots of things who played, but the war started in Afghanistan because of a wrong political system. Because the first war started with Russian in Afghanistan, because the Russian, the Soviet Union on that time tried to take Afghanistan, and that was the first reason who destroyed the political political system in Afghanistan. And of course, there's lots of things that play and have in this war, but I cannot say that the education was the reason. There's lots of reasons, but the big reason that I see is the political system. That there was some people, some countries who tried to support had some reason to come to Afghanistan and support some groups and do something because of political system and politics that they want to follow it. But and also one thing with Iran, I think it's not a good example to say that in Iran women are allowed to go to school and have a good right. Unfortunately, not. Yes, the women are allowed to go to school, could go to university, but still in Afghanistan, in Iran, there's lots of difficulties that Iranian women have, because they are not equal like men in Iran, and even men, they are not free in democrat in Iran.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course. I didn't mean to portray Iran as this wonderful paradise for women's rights. If I did inadvertently, I apologize. But I was trying to compare Iran to Afghanistan, because I know a little bit about Iran. I know very little about Afghanistan, other than all the horrible things I've been reading for the past 20 years. You mentioned foreign powers and influencing the political system in Afghanistan. We have the Soviet Union, the invasion of 78. We have Najibullah regime. We have the deposed king. We have Iran. Right now, Iran is very fearful of Afghanistan and is closing its borders. We have Pakistan on the other side. And we have the United States, finally, the U.S. invasion, NATO invasion, and so forth. My question is, can the political system of a country be changed by a foreign power? In other words, can Americans or Russians or Iranians or Pakistanis come in and tell a country how they should live, how they should vote, and what rights they should give to women? Or does it have to come from within the people? What do you think would happen if none of these countries ever invaded Afghanistan? Would it be better now?
Of course, because everyone who, if you read the history of Afghanistan and the diplomatic connection in Afghanistan and everything in this war, in this 40 years war in Afghanistan, I think there's lots of reason who come together, and that's the reason that we have war in this country. I don't blame any special country and special people, but there is lots of reasons. Of course, the American was a reason who's at first for the Taliban and tried to support Cold War against Russian. And at the first, Russian was the reason who tried to come to Afghanistan and try to have. On that time in 1970 was a time for the Soviet Union that they had a large of countries in ASEAN. And of course, Taliban, Pakistani or Pakistan government are supporting Taliban because of different reasons, like during the area between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and Iran is supporting also, and there's lots of countries, and also there was lots of mistake and wrong things in our government that it isn't work, and they were not strong to fight and to stay against foreigner countries. That is, as in my opinion, there's different reasons to come together and make this war. And also, of course, on that time was that the Kabul and the big city was very modern, different lifestyle than small countries in Afghanistan, and the people in a small country, in small cities, were religious or cultural, very a bit different than Kabul, and that was a good point for foreigner countries who used this.
When I look at all the ambitions and designs that foreign countries had for Afghanistan, starting with the British, then Russians, Soviets, and I was part of the Soviet Union back then too. My country was, all the way to the United States and NATO. Who do you think had the best interest of Afghanistan and its people at heart if you compare all the foreign powers that were trying to do something there? Who do you think could have succeeded? I'm going to ask you separate questions about what you thought about the US involvement later. But out of all these people, who do you think was most sincere? Was America sincere when it was trying to turn Afghanistan into a democratic country? Was the Soviet Union more sincere when it was trying to build socialism in a Muslim country? Who do you think was trying to do the best thing for Afghanistan all this time?
I don't think so. That a country came to Afghanistan and wanted to do a good thing for Afghans and Afghanistan. If the American came to Afghanistan not in 2001, they came to Afghanistan not to support and make a good country, a democratic system for us, or to rescue Afghanistan from war. No, they come to Afghanistan with NATO countries because they were in danger after 9th of September. And then they came to Afghanistan. Before that, we had a war in Afghanistan, and that was not important for American and America. And maybe it was a good idea that they come to Afghanistan and say for American people or for other NATO nation countries that we are going to Afghanistan to support Afghan people or Afghanistan and make a democratic country. Me as Afghan, no, that's not true. Because they come because they were in danger, and it's politic. And the same like Russia. Russia didn't come to Afghanistan to make a good country for Afghan people. No, they wanted to take Afghanistan and come to Afghanistan because of their politics. And that's the reason that I think everyone who reads the history, they can understand. And also there was a politic that the Americans support the Taliban at the first, because they think when we support Taliban, we can make a group against Russia, and it's a cold war between Russia and American. And of course there was lots Afghan people, stupid people who has been used in this politics. But that was not good for Afghanistan or for Afghan people, and still now it's the same.
Let me ask you theoretically, do you think one country can invade or come to another country under any guise, as a peacekeeper, as a friend, as a democracy builder or socialism builder? Is it possible that one country brings its troops to another country to better the lives of the people in the country it's occupying? Is it possible at all?
I don't know. I think I would not answer this question, because I will try to tell everything what I really know, because I'm not a politician, and I cannot talk about this topic very clearly. I will try to say my opinion and my experience, which as an Afghan who has been born and grew up in Afghanistan. But some in political discussions, some part is very difficult, and it's very and special in Afghanistan. It's very difficult to understand the right things.
Mm-hmm. I'm asking this question because I'm cognizant of the fact I know you live in Germany. It's your new home, I may say, right? Is that correct to say that?
Yeah, sure.
So Germany was also invaded after World War II, and foreign powers, the Western powers, the United States, the United Kingdom, and France, on the one hand, and Soviet Union on the other, changed the political system in Germany. They occupied it, but at the end, one may argue that they turned the Western Germany into a superpower economically. And once Germany was united, it's become a very different place from, anyway, when we look at history. It's probably one of the good examples of foreign occupation and foreign system brought by occupiers. What I'm trying to ask you is, when you look at Germany now, when you look at German people and the way they live, the way they watch television, you're a journalist there. I understand you're a freelancer and you work for reputable organizations, including ARD, German public broadcaster. What do people see when they talk about Afghanistan? Do they think, oh, they've been killing each other all the time, we're tired of Afghanistan, we're tired of them, watching poor people dying, people killing each other? What do Germans and Western people see? And my question to you as a professional journalist, what do you think they do not see? What is it that escapes them about your country? Because you know all the nuances. You've lived there. The last time you were there was 2015, you said, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So you know what's going on in the country. What do you think we, the people in the West, do not understand about Afghanistan?
I think in Germany it's different. In last few months, I feel that there's a lot of people who understand about Afghanistan and what's going on there. But of course, there's lots of people who don't understand, and they are just watching as a foreigner who get all information through media, and of course for government, political, and it's very difficult. Different. Some people understand what's going on there, and as you said, there's of course there's lots of people who see Afghanistan as a very poor country and very uneducated people, and the woman has no right in Afghanistan, and there's a lot of long time war in Afghanistan, and it's very complicated. And of course, there's a lot of people who think that foreigner countries, NATO countries, and American war to Afghanistan to support Afghan people and Afghanistan to make a very democratic and a good country. But there's also people who understand why the American come to Afghanistan and the NATO countries and what is going right and what's going wrong. At least if you see what happened in few weeks in Afghanistan with the people and with the U.S. Troops and NATO troops in Afghanistan, there's lots of mistakes. There's lots of things that for the people is very difficult to understand how a human can do that.
I want to read a question from our viewer, E117616. That's the viewer's name. He's asking, what does a guest think about Western media's portrayal of the situation in Afghanistan? We have witnessed a lot of manipulation to meet certain agenda during Karabakh War. Is that the same? In other words, let me explain the context of the question. Azerbaijan, my country, has gone through a war with its neighbor Armenia recently. It ended recently in early December. And some people are very unhappy with the way the Western media have portrayed the situation, have portrayed the reasons for the war, and the results of the war. Do you think the Western media are being completely honest when they talk about Afghanistan? Are they trying to show what the viewers want to see, or are they trying to honestly understand the situation on the ground and portray various points of view, give a lot of nuance and detail about what's going on there?
It is also different. And there's lots of reports and media who's working good, but there's also lots of media and journalists who's just reporting not really the reality in Afghanistan. Like just yesterday, I read a topic about Afghanistan in a German medium radio station that they try to introduce everything for teenager in Germany about Afghanistan, and there was lots of points that me as a person who knows about Afghanistan was not correct and nice, because I just try to explain. They write that yes, in Afghanistan was war, and the American come to Afghanistan and try to make a good country, and support a democratic government and make a democratic and a good country. But then after 20 years, the Americans see that, or NATO country, they see that it doesn't work, and we leave and go back. Go back, and we left Afghanistan. And that was a point that I say, okay, it's great, but there's very important information that didn't write in this topic, like that the American American government were trying since almost a year to handle with Taliban, to make a agreement with Taliban. And what is clearly happened in this agreement, there's lots of part that nobody knows. And after this agreement, as soon as they made it, and they left Afghanistan, and the Taliban come in power. That's very important in this time. But they didn't write in this topic. And these things happen. And like journalists from CNN who were in Afghanistan a few weeks ago with completely very black, it's not burqa, but it's hijab in Kabul. And me as a woman, as a journalist, I say, okay, what's wrong with you? Why you do that?
You didn't like that that journalist was wearing a hijab at all?
No, it's I think it's something that just showing and making advertisement,
Mm-hmm.
because when the Afghan people, journalists, women who were really in danger in Afghanistan, they try to go out with the normal clothes.
Mm-hmm.
But an American journalist from CNN is coming and putting all hijab over there, and then go to the street and portray and show the photos. What is it? Is not 100% right.
So you feel like she, by wearing hijab, she accepted the rules dictated by
Exactly.
Taliban and put other women, Afghan women, who were trying to not allow that to happen. She put them sort of at risk, or made their case, weakened their case for normal clothing.
Exactly.
What you say? Interesting. I have seen that interview, and I believe, from what I understand, and from what I have heard from my colleague journalists here in the West and in Azerbaijan, who were interviewing Iranians, for instance, that Iranian men, Iranian politicians would not even acknowledge a woman and pretend they don't see her unless she was covered. Maybe that was the case. Would that, if that was the explanation, would that satisfy you? That they wouldn't talk to her other, if she weren't wearing a hijab or cover her face or wear black.
I don't know what exactly happened on
Mm.
that time, but just as a person, as a woman, as a journalist from Afghanistan, when I see such a report on journalists in Afghanistan during this very important time, that the woman is going to street and demonstrating about the Taliban regime rules and don't want to accept it, then come as a you come as a American. I don't know, it's American or British, but that was a journalist from CNN, and
I
to
think she
put
was
just put
British, yes.
that, yes, and it is not it's not a respect for Afghan activists, women, and journalists.
I understand your point, and I think our viewers do too. My question, let me read another question from Hollywood Karaleva. She's asking you about the situation in Panjshir. What do you think about the situation there? Do you support Ahmad Shah Masood? I understand the context of the question. Let me take it a little broader. My understanding of what's going on in Afghanistan is the country has not, maybe, forgive me if I'm wrong, that's why I'm asking you, the country may not have formed an identity. Not all Afghans see themselves as belonging to the Afghan nationality. Maybe people identify with ethnic groups, maybe people support only their ethnic group because it's their ethnic group, not because of the political views. Like in the United States or in Azerbaijan, we look at the political views of political parties, or when we support somebody, we don't. I don't care if somebody belongs to this or that nationality. I don't even know if they do. Is that the same in Afghanistan? In other words, if you're, let's say, Tajik, can you support somebody who is not Tajik in the war? Does that really happen?
Uh, you asked me if I'm supporting Masood, the son of Ahmad Shah Masood. But my question is, I think for me it's very important to support democratic, and I support every Afghan people. I support my country. I support all Afghans who's living in Afghanistan. It doesn't matter Hazara, Pashtun, or Uzbek, or Hindu, or Sikh, Muslim, non-Muslim, or whatever. It's not very important for me. And I support especially people who's fighting for democratic, for a government, for a system, for a rule, who all Afghans, women, men, or children, whatever, they have a good right to live in this country. That's very important. About Panjshir, it is very tough and very difficult time for the people in Panjshir now, because it is a small city in middle of Afghanistan near to Kabul, and they are fighting for their rights, and they don't want to accept Taliban regime and Taliban system and role. which I really understand it. But if it really works, I don't know. It's very difficult because, as everyone knows, now the majority of the country is controlled by Taliban, and they are in power, and they are all over, and they have lots of opportunity in Afghanistan. But we will see what happens, and I just hope that they come in this discussion and just find a solution that that the people live in Afghanistan and were not to be killed.
Mhm. Let me ask you this, Ali Bala. It's a question coming from our viewer. He's asking, why wasn't there any resistance to Taliban? I don't know if that's correct or not, but that is a question. The state had an army armed by the United States, and what we saw is a total surrender to Taliban. Yes, it did seem that way, though, didn't it? That the government disintegrated once the U.S. announced a total withdrawal from the country. Um, Maybe people were expecting more resistance. Why do you think it didn't happen?
As I know, or my opinion is that we we have to see that after 2014, when the American and NATO soldier, after 2015 until now, it is all the time Afghan soldier who fight against Taliban. There was no American soldier or NATO soldier, and we are not. We have to see that in these years, the Afghan government and the Afghan soldier and the Afghan army police were able to take the control and the power in Afghanistan. Because the American soldier and the NATO soldier in Afghanistan was just supporting as building and education parts for Afghan soldiers, but not exactly on war zone. And now what really happened, my opinion is that the big question is that what was really in this agreement between American and Taliban in Doha, because there is some part in this agreement who has not been published, and even the Afghan government and Afghan people don't understand what has been written in this agreement. And there's lots of part in this agreement which is not acceptable, because they have written Taliban as a government, and even the writing that the Taliban will give passport and visa.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come and say that we made an agreement with Taliban and we don't recognize Taliban as a government. But if it's true, how you can make an agreement with Taliban and writing in this agreement that you will pass or not pass a visa or passport on this part, because passing a visa and passport depends on a government, not a group. And there's lots of different things. And why the army in the Afghan army didn't fight against Taliban, there was lots of reasons. At first, I think the American made this agreement and just American and Taliban. They didn't put Afghan government, Afghan people in this agreement. In this 20 years, Afghan soldier, NATO countries, NATO army are fighting all together. But when the American come and make agreement with this group, why they don't put all the country together and ask them? They ignore all Afghan government, Afghan people, and other and Afghan army thing. In this 20 years, we are fighting against this group with all power, with all money that we support that we have from NATO countries, from American, but still we are not allowed. It's not able to fight against this group. And we know that if we continue fighting against Taliban, we will not win, because now when we don't win in this 20 with all sport and many everything which we have, how we can win now? And if we know that we are not we cannot able to win this war, why should we kill lots of people in this fighting? And of course, the Afghan government was a corrupt government in this 20 years, a government who really couldn't support and make a good system for this people and for the soldier. And they were not happy with this government. And that's lots of reason that I think that the Afghan army didn't fight, and they hope that if we give everything very easy, and the Taliban is coming and taken, and they will not kill lots of people.
You know, there are a lot of conspiracy theories, and some of them you voiced regarding the U.S. negotiations in Doha with Taliban. On the one hand, the United States did not recognize the government. On the other hand, it was negotiating with them. Taliban fighters were escorting American citizens to the airport so they would leave because they were being attacked by the Islamic State, ISIS-K. Lots of interesting questions come out from that fact alone. We have visitors here, we have viewers who say that the Taliban will soon attack Iran, and the attack on Iran will be supported by the United States. So, when you ask people, people have all kinds of conspiracy theories. Some sound very outlandish, some seem possible. My question is regarding what I read and heard. The United States left behind a lot of equipment, military equipment that the Taliban was proudly showing at the airport, military planes. These cost a lot of money, and I am a U.S. taxpayer. I paid for some of it too. And now it's in the hands of Taliban. Do you think that there was some agreement between the United States and Taliban for Americans to leave a lot of military equipment to the Taliban and in return get their cooperation in evacuating American citizens? Do you think there are some things like that were happening that we don't know about?
It is not confirmed now, and I think it's not clear. Nobody knows exactly what happened. But as I hear from Afghan side, it is exactly that. That is it. That all Afghan people is saying that yes, the American make this agreement, this negotiation with Taliban, and then as soon as they leave the country, the Taliban is coming. And as we see on hear from Afghan media, that in this time. There was lots of parts in cities in Afghanistan when they started fighting against Taliban, but they become an order to leave the city and don't fight against Taliban, and that is things that everybody ask. Okay. How and why the American left Afghanistan very soon, and why couldn't they make to take all the stuff, even if they couldn't take all important documents that they have in American embassy, and why did happen?
Yes,
big
sorry,
and a big country, then don't make that. Who can make it?
You are asking a very interesting question that is also very important to me. Why some documents, very sensitive documents, were left behind in Afghanistan? Could it happen by accident? When I look at the situation, what I see is the United States government left a lot of people who were supporting the U.S. government, translators, interpreters, maybe informants and others. And this is being covered by the U.S. media. These questions are being asked in the U.S. Congress. They're being asked by American press. How did it happen that so many people that put their lives at risk supporting the US troops, supporting the US government in Afghanistan, were left behind. I saw the headlines this morning on CNN. Um, do you think that happened because the withdrawal was hectic? Do you think that happened by accident? Do you think, what do you think of this? Is it a bad thing? Will people support, will that change how people view the United States? Will the people's support for the United States change as a result of what happened?
Um, I think that's a point that a reason that I hear from Afghan side that many people writing on telling me that we hate American, we hate America because they put all me and my family in danger and left behind, and I think I cannot say that happened very fast and accidentally, no, because the Americans start negotiating with Taliban for a year, and the news that what will happen and why they try to start this negotiation with America and with Taliban, because they understand, and I think America is a big country and they have a foreign politic and they have FBI, and if they didn't understand this one and this information, who knows then? And for what is FBI and foreign political politics that they have? They should know everything, but why they did? Why they put all these people who really support and put their self and their families in danger and supporting American people because they believed that they will support us and we are doing good for our country. We make a good government, a good system for us. But now they feel that they have been stupid with American and America.
Well, I understand that the views of foreigners of the United States is that, America cannot make any mistakes, and if America makes a mistake, it's on purpose. But as someone who lives in the United States and has lived most of my life here, I can attest, I can say that yes, even people here make horrible mistakes sometimes. Even people here cannot handle a crisis. We had Hurricane Katrina that showed that the people in our government can make horrible mistakes, and they don't make them because they don't like people or hate people. They make them because they're human and they make errors sometimes. But that's a whole different discussion. Let me ask you this. We see Afghanistan. I can't remember a single time when I heard something positive coming, some positive news coming from Afghanistan. But people live and life continues. Can you tell me what is your most happiest memory with Afghanistan when you lived there as a child, when you lived there when you were younger, when you visited in 2015, when you left in 2015? Did you have any happy memories when you think about that country?
Of course, but yeah, I've been born and grew up in wartime in Afghanistan, and I experienced Mujahideen in this time. Have been burned, and I experienced when the Taliban was there, and then after 2001, and as a Hazara, I had some freedom to move in Kabul and to go to school, to educate, to go to university and work as a journalist in Afghanistan, and I think the good time that I had in Afghanistan was with my family in our house in Kabul between 2007 to 2012, or maybe 2011. And school time was a nice time for me.
Do you have any friends who live there still? Do you keep in touch with them? Do you talk to them?
Unfortunately, yeah, there's lots of my friends, my relative, and my family is still in Afghanistan. Just few of them make it to Pakistan, but now it is not possible, and they are still there.
What do you think will happen to people in Afghanistan, especially to women who used to have professional jobs? Let's think about what you expect, you and people in your circle, apparently very well educated, people who can move to the West and be competitive. You're a journalist in Germany. That's not a very easy thing to do, I'm assuming. Um, what do people that you know expect to happen? What is your prognosis for the future?
I think it is very difficult. As like my relative, they have been trying since years to go to school, to go to university, and try to work. And for example, some of my relatives who are working as a police or in different part in Afghanistan, with children, with kids and family, and all this insecure situation in Kabul. But even, for example, one of my relatives that she had 2 children, a family, and she worked all the time, all the day, and at the evening go to university. And now, when the Taliban come to Kabul, at the first day, they burned all the documents that they had. And she called me and she was crying and say, Arezao, see, in this 20 years, I worked all the time, all the day and evening. I bring my children to home and then go to university. And I even didn't have time to sleep enough. But now it is a time which I'm sitting at home and burning all my documents, if passport, all my certificates from university, from my work, because I think when the Taliban come to our house and control everything and search, it would be it make a danger for me. And now they are since all the time they are just at home. They cannot go to outside. Of course, they couldn't go to work and work as a police officer or something else. Yeah, it's very difficult, and I'm hopeless for my people and my country, and for people who really tried in this 20 years to make a better life. But now we are going back. We're going 100 years back, and we are just fighting. If now the woman is going outside and demonstrating on the street to say that if we could go to school, that's a very basic right that as a human, that I think American people, European people, and other people even cannot imagine how difficult it can be to just fight that if I go to school.
Yes, it's hard for me to understand how being educated. You were talking about burning certificates and university diplomas, if I understood correctly. Um, it it's a horrifying image for me. I mean, if you are afraid of the fact that you are educated, to the extent that you have to destroy all the documents that you worked so hard to get. If there was one thing that you could convince the current Taliban regime, one thing that you could change in your country, what would that be?
I think it's very late for this answer and question, because I think it's very difficult, and I can wish anything now for my country, for my people. Now, when the Taliban is in this country, and I just hope that they can stay alive, all my relative, family, and all the people who's really in danger in Afghanistan. And what I really wish that they at least just testing that the European country or American country, Western country, and all the countries in the world don't recognize Taliban and this regime as a government
So you
because they
don't think
know
Taliban can change anything for the better, not even one thing?
no, no, they are a terrorist group. Why? How you can wait to see anything good from this group? Me as a person who lost, I lost lots of my relative, family, my colleagues, my friends in this war. They killed my family, my relatives, my friends, just because they were active. They were just working. They were just being like a human. They killed them, and now I should accept and wish that they are doing something good. No, if they kill a person without anything, how?
You know, I hear what you're saying. I hear that they're a terrorist organization, and it's not only your or my opinion. The United States government recognizes them as terrorists. We're talking about Taliban. In Russian media, every time you mention Taliban, you have to, it's a law in Russia, you have to write the organization is recognized as a terrorist group, terrorist organization. Is it surprising, though? You did try to answer that question partly, but I want to ask a separate question on this. Is it surprising that Americans, Russians, Turks, Qataris are talking to an organization, basically, a regime that has killed so many people, that has been recognized as a terrorist organization? Does that surprise you at all, or do you think this is realpolitik? This is what countries have to do in order to maintain some sort of international order? Is that right?
Um, yes, the Taliban is now in Afghanistan and they take the power in Afghanistan, and that is a difficult reality that we should accept it because they are there. What should we do? We fought 20 years against this group, but we lost it. We have to accept this hard thing that is happening now. But what I'm really thinking, and it's very important for me, at least they can say that if you try to put all women without any crime in prison, they don't give any right to women and minority in Afghanistan and the people, all the people, men also, uh, and they can say that no, if you try to do that, we don't recognize you as a government. Because I think now the Taliban trying to make a diplomatic relation with the countries, and it's very important for Taliban. And the countries, all the countries, they know, okay, when it is very important for Taliban, then we can make it politics that they are doing all the time. And they say, yeah, you you took Afghanistan, but if you try to be as a terrorist group, as a Talibanism regime country, we don't recognize you. At least they can do that now.
Arezao, I thank you very much for your time today. I didn't notice how 1 hour, more than 1 hour of our conversation went. I appreciate your time, and I understand that these are not very easy questions to answer. I'm trying to put myself in your situation. It would be very difficult for me to talk about Azerbaijan if my country were in the situation of yours. I appreciate your time. I thank you very much, and I hope we get to talk again soon. And maybe we will talk about better things, more optimistic things.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me time, and I hope that I could answer uh, good, that everyone could understand it. I tried, and I say again, I'm not a politician. and as just a person, I say everything which I experience and I see, and during my contact, which I understand, I try to explain and share with you all.
I appreciate it. I understand that neither you nor I speak our native language, and when we talk about things that are so difficult, it is very hard to express oneself, but I'm pretty sure that we understood you very well. Thank you so much, Arezao. Have a very good evening.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was an Afghan journalist, a journalist born in Afghanistan. Now she's a German journalist. She lives in Köln, in Cologne, in Germany. Um, it is very difficult to talk about these things because the entire time I was listening to Arezao Naiby, whom I consider a very brave young woman, I was trying to imagine what I would say and how I would talk about the situation had it happened in my country, in Azerbaijan. Arshad Mammadov corrects me, not Köln but Cologne. Yes, I am aware of the English translation of the name of the city, but it is my personal preference to call the cities the way they're called in their native language. So if somebody said Cologne millions of years ago instead of Köln, that's fine. But for Azerbaijani audience, it's easier to pronounce it as Köln, right? I asked a question about education. I don't want to editorialize. I don't want to say what you are supposed to think about this interview. You heard the whole thing yourselves. You can come to your own conclusions. But the question about education that I asked was very important to me personally because this is something I am seeing in Azerbaijan right now. The erosion, the devaluation of public education is a very, very troublesome trend that can lead to a lot of negative consequences that many of us cannot imagine right now. And I am asking my audience in Azerbaijan, our channel's audience in Azerbaijan, to think about that. Afghanistan in the 70s was a very modern, very cultured, very developed country. Its people, they lived the same life as we do now. They also could not have imagined that 40 or 50 years later they would be hundreds and hundreds of years ago. They would go back to the future, or they would go to their past. None of us are guaranteed a good future if we don't work for it. None of us guaranteed a good and better life. Our children are not guaranteed to live a better life than we did if we don't work for it. If we don't recognize dangers that we are trying hard to ignore right now. Azerbaijan has very serious problems with education, with access to education. I am very concerned with the fact that many families are choosing not to send their girls to school. Because these girls in the future, they will become mothers and they will have to pass education that they have to their children. Isn't that scary? To me, it is. I'm not saying that the situation in Afghanistan holds a lot of lessons for us, but in a way it does. Again, we're not far away. We're not a world apart. There's only one country between Azerbaijan and Afghanistan. It's Iran. It's our neighbor. Is it in the same region? Maybe yes, maybe no. Many of you would say that it isn't, but again, it's not that far away. Our history is not all that different from each other. Our heritage, our Islamic heritage, our civilizational, let's say, baggage is not all that different from each other. So if there is something we could learn from history or from the experience of our neighbors, this is probably it. We need to pay attention to my Azerbaijani viewers. We need to pay attention to education. We need to make sure that all our citizens, all our future citizens, including girls, boys, it doesn't matter, go to school. they get an opportunity to be educated. So in the future, they could make educated decisions about how they want to live, in what kind of country they want to live, and what kind of future they want to see for their own children. I thank you very much. I know that English is not very accessible in our region. That's very unfortunate. But for those of you who could watch and understand our guest today, I thank you. And I really hope that you will think about the issues that we were talking about. Have a good night. Bye bye.